back in time. First you entered the outer office, where his smiling secretary always sat at a small brown desk on the left. On the wall directly in front of you, on rows of gleaming glass shelves, shining under the lights, were just some of the Oscars he'd won over the years. In total, there were 32 of them, each one representing years of work, each one imbued with his genius, and each one collected by Walt himself via the Academy Awards. Straight ahead was the door to Walt's office. I opened it, stepped inside. It was like a waking dream. Everything was unchanged, exactly as I remembered it, as if Walt had just stepped out of the room and would be back at any minute. This was a simple, comfortable space. A sofa, some armchairs. Not at all the office of a movie mogul designed to impress. Walt's office was a place to work and think, to meet and talk. The more I walked around, the more came back to me. On his desk, little objects, papers and letters in the tray, photographs of his two girls, Diane and Sharon, his wife, Lillian. A pen left on a pad with scribbled notes. Had he written to me sitting there at that desk? And there was the baby ground, where the wonderful Sherman brothers, Robert and Richard, used to play for Walt. I remember them both sitting there like it was yesterday, performing the song they'd written for me to sing in the Parent Trap. It was the first song they'd ever composed for a movie. And there was the little kitchenette with a bar and stools that had fascinated me as a child, fully equipped, every cupboard stocked with food and small bottles of Coca-Cola, all circa 1960. And as I looked around, I became aware of the California sunlight streaming through the window, filling the room with shimmering, dancing beams of light. It was like returning to the magician's study, a kind of sacred space. Afterwards, Howard Green and Rebecca Klein kindly took me to the Walt Disney archives and gave me access to this remarkable historical department, which is typically reserved for internal company research only. Of course, all my files were there too, relating to the 6 films I'd made for Disney, and I was given unrestricted access to these. As I went through box after box, I marveled at how every single scrap of information had been preserved, recorded, and carefully filed away. Press releases, interviews, in-house memoranda, all the letters that I'd written to Walt, many of which had had to be typed out, since my scribbling at that time was excruciating and often incomprehensible. And of course, all Walt's letters to me. I was struck by how sweet they were, how personal, generous, and loving. There were also letters between Walt and my parents, correspondence I was aware of but never read, revealing tensions and disagreements about my career, much of which was a revelation to me. I was swept up by memories. So many came flooding back. The golden years of my childhood, the films I made, and of Walt Disney, the man. Earlier that day, at lunch, Michael Giamma had turned to me with his sweet smile and said, "So come on, Hayley, tell us, what was he like?" The table hushed. They waited for my reply. Then it hit me. Of the hundreds of people now working at Disney, most had never known him, hadn't even met him. But I had. Walt Disney had been a kind of surrogate father to me through my teenage years, and the studios had been